Yeah, it is another episode of the Autumn Windbags. RJ Clifford, Juan Soto. Let's have some fun today. The GM search is on. Mike Mayock, as we all know, out. Who's going to come back in? Hopefully sooner than later, Mark Davis makes this decision, because if there's a coaching change, the GM needs to be a part of that. Assistant coaches, we've got some major contracts to deal with coming up. We've obviously got a draft and scouting, and we can't be behind the eight ball here. Let's get to work, right?
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk about exactly what made Mike Mayock fall apart for the Raiders and why this experiment didn't work. But before we do, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, notification, pin, tweet, all the things that you can do. Make sure you do all that down below. So where exactly did the Mike Mayock experiment go wrong? I loved the hire at the time. I thought it was great because John Gruden, he's only going to hire his buddies. Right, he's not going to hire anyone he fights with. He's the czar. He was a
Mike Mayock.
He's a football guy. Yeah, good football guy. Yeah, all about it. Yeah,
you got one of those. You got to get the frown down.
I can't do it. Terrible favorite
football guy.
Yeah. Clearly, I can't do it. I'm not going to try. I'm going to look like a fish that's drowning. Because really, all he wanted was a scout. Right? He's like, really? I'm going to make the personnel decisions.
Yeah, he was a decision maker anyway.
I'm not going to make decisions. I just want someone to do the homework for these fourth and fifth rounders that I don't want to do. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he was known to be. Right? As a draft analyst for the NFL Network and other places, that's what he was there to do. He handled a lot of the media responsibilities that Gruden didn't want to do, which makes perfect sense. He's a
media guy.
Forever,
media
right?
forever.
That's what he does.
Got a hot ass daughter.
All positives. All positives. But clearly, didn't pan out at all. The first round draft picks from 2019 through 2020, Clay Farrell, Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Abram. And that's the good one. That's the good first round. 2020, Henry Ruggs and Damon Arnett, both gone for both being idiots. And 2021, Alex Leatherwood, who was a starter the entire season, had to literally change positions because he was playing so poorly. And there's obviously far more to being a GM than just your first round draft picks, but that's the easy, that's kind of how you're gauged as an easy look, right? That's kind of the first things first round picks are tied to their GMs are tied to their first round picks. And that's where it goes. So as we analyze Mike Mayock, the other part too is we all know that it's impossible to know exactly how much of these decisions was purely Mike Mayock. John Gruden had to sign off on everything Mayock did, but he is the face of these transactions. He is the guy put in charge and responsible for these transactions from the outside looking in. So he needs to be looked at.
Yeah, if you're going to say, oh, well, if he was just a scout and Gruden was one making decisions, why would you want to keep that guy as your GM anyway?
Mm-hmm.
He's just a scout. He wasn't ever the GM. You're going to take a chance on a first-time GM? No, you want a guy who's been through the system and who has proven success. Obviously, he doesn't have proven success. The issue with Mayock is a few. He was brought, like you said, to be a scout and to laugh at Gruden's jokes, okay? And he wasn't very successful drafting, okay? And he wasn't very successful in free agency either.
Mm.
When you make your big splashes are like your first day draft and your big time free agents. Those are your big splashes, right?
Yep.
Let's just take a look at what he's like. Let's look 2019. Let's just start there. Like what you said. Cleveland Farrell, probably not going to be on the team next year.
Yep.
Okay. Josh Jacobs, it's, who knows? Maybe not, depending on whatever. Jonathan Abram, Jonathan Abram is a starter. He's gotten better, but still, has his troubles. All right.
Coverage problems and injury problems.
2 out of these 3 were severe reaches. When you're trading away generational pieces like Khalil Mack, and you're shooting, 2 out of your 3 picks basically away, when there are far more talented players on the board who are all pros that in their NFL career, you don't have to get 2 for 2, but goddamn, when you whiff in the first round, you want a guy who's on your team, contributing, whatever. Okay, 2 out of 3 are on the team contributing. Cleveland Farrell really isn't contributing. But look at this. In free agency, Trent Brown, 4 years, $66 million, not on the team. Terrell Williams, 4 years, $44 million, not on the team.
Injured half the time he was there.
LaMarcus Joyner, 4 years, $42 million, not on the team. Those are your big three.
Massive whiffs.
3 massive whiffs. So this is kind of like your draft after the draft, like your draft after you've already seen how they played in the NFL.
Yeah,
3 massive whiffs. Okay, so this is like your pseudo first round. Is your big free agent acquisitions. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, 20. Well, actually, also you traded a 3rd round pick who ended up being Deontay Johnson, by the way, for Antonio Brown, and a 5th, actually, a 3rd and a 5th for Antonio Brown, and look how that came out. Yeah. All right, so just whiff after whiff after whiff. Okay, all right, 2020, Henry Ruggs, not on the team. Damon Arnett, not on the team. All right, free agents. Corey Littleton lost his job to a rookie this year.
Yep.
Carl Nassib, rotational guy, getting paid
minimal
way too much money.
Guy. Yep.
Nick Kwiatkowski, not
a factor.
Not a factor at all. Marcus Mariota, way overpaid. Backup. Jason,
even when Derek Carr was injured in the last game of last season, they didn't have Marcus play. They were that unhappy with him.
Jason Witten, 1 year, $4 million for what when you have, Foster Moreau back there. Okay. 2021. First round, Alex Leatherwood. I was pounding the table for Christian Darrisaw. Christian Darrisaw is pretty legit tackle. All right. Alex Leatherwood, not so much. Free agency. Yannick Ngakoue, not bad. Pretty good pickup for us. Did what he wanted to do.
Yep.
Kenyon Drake, way overpaid for a running back. There are better running backs out there for the money. I'm not saying that there are better running backs than Kenyon Drake out there. I'm saying for the money that you could have spent elsewhere. Yeah, you way overpaid for him. You got your John Browns, the KJ Wrights, but you also got your Solomon Thomases, your Jeffersons, your Haywards, your Darius Philons. Those guys, yeah, great pickups for 1 year contract guys. Overall, your big splashes, the headline grabbers, he didn't come through, and that's what you're going to remember when you think of Mayock's run here. Was the headline grabbers, the first round picks, the big name free agents? How did they pan out? They didn't pan out great. Now, you before you say it, you cannot say, oh, well, Gruden was making the decisions, because Mayock was part of those decisions. You don't know how big and how small. We can't say that he did or didn't make those decisions. He was part of that administration who made those decisions. Because of that, he kind of did the hot seat. He went to sit down in his seat after the Cincinnati game, and as his butt hit the seat, Mark Davis is like, I need to talk to you for a second. Bring your playbook. He wasn't there very long. What was the game on Saturday? They flew in that night. Monday morning is when he got
less than 48 hours. He was
gone. It's like
after the season. Yeah.
I wouldn't have kept him either. He didn't show me enough. Could he be like a public relations guy? Like, yeah, sure, he could be that guy. Could he be a scout? Sure, but you're not going to, like you said, you can't be demoted like with Bisaccia. You can't.
He's not going to say no to $5 to $7 million a year to be on TV just to be an everyday scout for an NFL.
Yeah, to do what he wants and watch film and be on TV.
He's got too much. And this is the thing with Mayock. I would have loved to see how Mayock could have done without Gruden, right? Just to see, because at the end of the day, we don't know, right? Again, I support Mark Davis's decision to get rid of Mayock, because I'm assuming that Mark Davis did know who was really pushing for which guys, Mayock or Gruden, right? I think he's got his finger on the pulse enough to know who's getting who. And if it was Mayock making all the good decisions and Gruden all the bad ones, Mark Davis would have kept him. It feels like it's the other way around, or a version of it. I'm sure it wasn't that black and white, but enough of the gray area was Mike Mayock's problem. The other part of this is, and he made some good moves, which we'll get to in a second. The other part of this is there's 3 things, like the 3 main jobs: draft, free agents, and contracts. Those are the 3 things. Basically it, right? You're drafting new guys, you're signing free agents off of other teams, either through trades or free agents, and you're dealing with contracts for all of them, but most importantly, your own players, right? He had no background being in charge of contracts. Like, he doesn't have a legal background. There's nothing specifically about him that says like, oh, he's a great negotiator. He's a great legal mind, or he can go toe to toe with the best agents in the NFL and get a great deal. He had nothing in his past that said that. Free agents, there was nothing else in his past, like other than just generally being a football guy, knowing that he had an eye for NFL talent. That hasn't been part of his job description in a decade, right? Mm-hmm. The one thing that he did have, at least on paper, was an eye for drafting and college players. That was supposed to be what he was best at, right? On paper, that's like, okay, that's what we're bringing him in to do. And he wasn't. Like, even the things that he was supposed to be good at, when the biggest spotlight was on him, he whiffed. And you can't have a guy where it's like, that's your best thing. And if you can't make it up being other part, because it's also, I think, fair to acknowledge that even great GMs miss on first rounders all the time, right? Like, there's GMs of the year. They'll win the award and then go 3 seasons with multiple drafts, right? It happens, right? So we can't pretend like he had to hit on every first rounder. Like, if that's his standard, if that's our standard, we'll never have a GM last, because no GM has ever been able to do it. But, right? Bill Bell personnel whiffs on first rounders all the time, more times than he lands, right? But at least, and this is what sucks for Mike Mayock. He did get some really great value late rounds. He did land some really good mid-round dudes. Max Crosby in round 4, Foster Moreau round 4, Hunter Renfrow round 5 in 2019. Like, that's 4 through. If you're drafting 4 and 5 and you're getting those players, that's about as good as you can do. Basically, that was awesome. 2020, rough. Henry Ruggs, Damon Arnett, Lynn Bowden, Brian Edwards, Tanner Muse, John Simpson, and Amik Robertson. And
that's when we were stealing. That's when he said, "Oh, it's like stealing."
Brian Edwards is the only starter.
Yeah, John Simpson's starting due to injury only.
Of injuries, right? In fairness, the Nelson Aguilar pickup for $1 million, awesome. He got almost 1,000 yards for us for $1 million. Great. Devontae Booker, $1 million. He outplayed Josh Jacobs that year in yards per carry. Really good backup running back. That played great. The hardest part is 2021, he was fucking brilliant. He was whoever's in charge, like whoever can take credit for the 2021 draft and free agent pickups, was a magician. This is one of the best draft classes in Raiders history, just minus the first one, right? The most important one, Alex Leatherwood. You move on down to that. Trayvon Moehrig was one of the best safeties in football, not just rookies. He was one of those consistent snap for snaps. You almost never heard of him making a huge mistake. Trayvon Moehrig. Malcolm Kuntz came in later in the season, played great. Divine Diablo became a starter. Nate Hobbs, starter. Tyree Gillespie had to play some serious minutes and played really, really well. Deep, awesome draft class. Super young, great draft class. Free agents, we went through some of them. Yannick Ngakoue played great. KJ Wright played great for his money. Solomon Thomas, Quentin Jefferson, Casey Hayward for $2.5 million as a shutdown corner. Played for pennies, changed the offense a little bit. Darius Philon played out of his mind. It's so ironic that the second Mayock had an amazing draft class and an amazing free agent class as when he finally got shit canned. The next guy who takes over is going to get a lot of credit and a lot of love for that last draft class that Mike Mayock picked up.
One thing you have to look at, though, is you have to take a look at one thing that we've all talked about is the lack of talent on this team.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you get that talent? You get that talent through your draft, through free agency, right?
Yeah.
And we just are lacking talent at a lot of positions. We're lacking depth of talent in positions.
That's the biggest thing is depth, I think. Like our pure starters, if no one got hurt, we were pretty good.
If we kept Ruggs, and like without him, our wide receiver core just wasn't it wasn't up to
Richie Incognito, Denzel Good, if they were able to play throughout the season,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like should have been pretty. Like, that line should have been all right, but just this no depth, and that came from terrible 2019, 2020 draft classes and free agent classes.
Agreed.
Like,
Yeah.
it left a giant hole on this team. And thank God, like this random rookie class that wasn't really all that heralded and no one really talked about played phenomenal.
Yeah,
Played great for how low they were.
That rookie class really saved the season, because if it just relied on the guys from the previous years, it just wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
If you take a look at, like, Carl Cochran said it on our broadcast before the draft last year, or after the draft last year, there's the top 15 players, and then from like 16 to 50, you can just move them around, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it just depends on what the team thinks of them and what the team need is, right? But that top 50 is usually about top 50 players. So the top 50 players, Farrell, Jacobs, Abram, Mullen, Ruggs, Arnett, Bowden. Oh, no, Bowden, not Bowden. Ruggs, Arnett, Leatherwood, Merrick. Yeah. I mean, you have starters on that team, but are they impact players? Are they guys that are going to be like, oh, that guy, he could have made the Pro Bowl this year. This guy is really good at doing this, or this guy is really good at doing that.
Yeah.
They're starting players, but the thing is, we have to stop looking at our players compared to the players that we've had here in the recent past, because we had shit players here. Okay, we have to take a look at our players and how they play in relation to the rest of the league.
I wonder what's going to be next for Mike Mayock, because
Like
part of me
Stevie,
is
man.
like, well, that's the thing. I was like, because I've heard people talking, and kind of the chirping is like, well, after getting fired from the Raiders and after some bad draft classes, how can people look at him on TV and be like, all right, this guy knows, when the next draft rolls around and Mike Mayock's on there and he's like, I know no one's looking at this guy, but let me tell you, he's great. Who's going to believe him? But like, you think of all like the big name broadcasters, like Tony Romo had his job taken away by a rookie and went into broadcasting, and now he's like the most highly sought after and highly paid guy. John Gruden, like he had like a losing streak in Tampa Bay, became one of the highest paid broadcasters in sports. So it's like, I don't think it's going to affect him at all. Mayock is going to be just fine. This is a little experiment that he did, and he's going to be a lot happier in front of a camera instead of, working 2 or 3 days a week, getting makeup on, having 3 PAs, doing his nails, bringing him lunch, like being treated like, TV talent instead of grinding tape with Gruden at 9:30 p.m. at night on a Tuesday. He's going to be a lot happier.
Ultimately, he talked a big game, and the game didn't transfer onto the field.
Mm-hmm.
I think this team gutted out a lot of wins. I think we were like the worst. We think we were minus 65 in point differential. That's the worst to ever make the playoffs. And because we were playing a third or fourth place schedule this year.
Mm-hmm.
And now next year we're going to play a second place schedule, and we'll see how that team does, right? But ultimately, we were lacking talent. Ultimately, a lot of our talent that stepped up were all younger people and rookies, and you can't have that hit or miss. And if that 2020 year is going to end up that should have buried almost anyone.
Mm-hmm.
That 2020 year, you got what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 out of the top 140 picks, and one of them is on your team.
You look at the you're talking about schedule. You look at the 4 teams in the championships left, the AFC and NFC championship: San Francisco, Rams, Chiefs, and Bengals. We play 3 of them next season. We play the Niners, the Rams, and obviously the Chiefs twice. Like, this schedule ain't getting easier. You know what I mean? Like, we can't say like, well, it was a really hard schedule this season. We'll be better. It'll be easier. No, it won't be easier next season. We play the NFC West and the AFC South. We got the Pats, the Colts. Likely we got the Jaguars mixed in there. Jaguars and Texans. We'll take 2 easy ones. But other than that,
Ultimately, guys,
It's gonna be rough.
the thing that we have to focus on is getting better everywhere. We need better coaching. We need better position coaching. We need better talent evaluation. Everything needs to get better. Better play on the field. Better discipline. It just needs to get all better. We can't rest on our laurels. We have to get
it all
better.
starts with the next GM, right? It all starts with the next GM.
Yep, all starts from there.
I really hope Mark Davis doesn't fall in love with a coach and say like, "Oh, you're GM and head coach and czar and offensive coordinator.
No,
you do everything
I don't think
you
he's
want."
gonna do that. I don't think he's gonna do that.
I'm hoping he learned his lesson.
Yeah.
They need that. They need that separation, right? Coaches fall in love with players, and this is one thing we talked about all last season. And again, we're using Mayock as kind of the figurehead of everything, but the organization in general, they don't look at draft picks as assets, as pieces of equity to be used for something. They're like, I'm in love with that guy. Let's do whatever it takes to get him. And we're going to overdraft and grab Clay Farrell or Leatherwood or whoever, right? Instead of, we want Leatherwood. We can get him the second round. Let's trade down or roll the dice a little bit and understand it's not worth spending a first rounder on him, even if we think he's really good, because the equity isn't there. Like the equity transition doesn't make sense. You got to be willing to say, I'm willing to risk a guy to not reach for him. And also you have to have the self-awareness of knowing we really want this guy, but no one else believes in him, but we know. It's like, you don't have a history to say that. You don't have a history of great drafting and free agency acquisition to say everyone's wrong, we're right. Some guys can, right? When the Patriots and Bill Belichick say trust the process in a season where they lose, you can say that because you got a whole history of winning. You can say like our process works. It just didn't work this season. You've got Brandon Staley with the Chargers saying trust the process. You're like, no, you don't have any right to say that. You have no proof. You're supposed to be this defensive genius, and the defense has never been worse. Like you are way more talented than the Raiders, and we beat your ass with everything on the line.
Yeah, if Andy Reid drafts some no name out of some small college you never heard of, okay,
random like slot receiver, you're like, ooh,
yeah, and that same thing. If Belichick drafts some random defensive player out of somewhere you never heard of, you're like, all right, well, he probably saw something.
Yeah,
because he's been known to bring those guys up and make them all pros.
Yep. I think that's the biggest thing. Next GM, be self-aware, understand what this franchise is about. And,
understand the process. I don't think that Mayock understood the process. He understood scouting. I don't think he understood drafting. I don't think he understood that process.
You got to treat it as an economist, not as a coach, not as a guy that like falls in love with the player. You got to look at it as everything is tangible. Everything has a specific value. Maximize that value. All right. Best of luck in that search, Mark Davis, because we're all counting on you. Until then, knock on wood if you're with me.